Are you happy? Are you deep down satisfied with the person you are, how you're living your life, and the future as it appears today? Do you have a passion? Is there any one thing in your life that is so important that it makes prioritizing everything else simple? If the answer to any of those questions is no, do you have any idea why? Welcome to the Veramore Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Keegan, co-founder of the dating app Veramore and the nonprofit app Hero Harbor. Happiness, mine and that of others, is something that's always been very important to me. I've devoted my life to understanding how we take the things life throws at us and combine that with our own special gifts to come away with an experience that, while not always perfect, is one we are proud of and allows us the fewest regrets and least amount of heartache. Whether through my personal musings or conversations with guests, the aim here is not to find a one-size-fits-all to-do list of change, but instead a mindset that lessens our fear, reduces judgment of ourselves and others, and frees each individual to build the life that truly represents happiness for them.
Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls.
I always had, irons in the fire and always had something going.
That's another common thread, is that we always have a lot of things. I go crazy because I have 90 things going, but I would be crazier yet and not fit to live with if I didn't have those things. So
So going back a second to that training incident.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I was out 5-6 months. And I remember falling asleep on the couch and having a dream where it was me and the guys from my squad, and we're in a completely different environment, but there was a firefight and I couldn't save them. My one best friend, I remember holding him and just, I woke up and my face, my throat hurt. And my face was wet from crying.
Yeah.
And I never understood what that was. And I'm like, oh, just shook it off.
Mm-hmm.
But then as time went on, my temperament got worse. I had a hard time holding a job because I had no problem saying fuck you, I don't need you, I'm out.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not proud of it, but I even got fired from a job because I told the guy that if he didn't quit acting like a bitch, I was going to slap him like one.
Yeah.
And
I've been told, you don't know how to follow directions. And I've said, look, I'm a Marine. I have more direction in my pinky than you have in your entire body. But because I was rebellious like you were too. I had a very good career, but the same way that you were talking about with, questioning him, sending you into the light, it was the same thing for me. It's like, just because I said so,
it's not good enough.
No, it's not. It's just not.
So, so I had that. And then of course, working in the 911 system here, and then, working as a coroner investigator, it just started compounding, and I never knew what it was. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I woke up drenched in sweat because I had a nightmare where I myself had put a gun to my head. Remember hearing the click of the trigger, but then waking up.
Right.
And the last service that I worked for 13 years ago, I got fired because I had a guy that was strung out on 4 different kinds of drugs. was combative, and he spit on me. And I'm like, all right, I'll give you the first one, but don't let it happen again. Well, he did. Well, by the time I jumped up, one of the firefighters that I was working with had already, put his boot to the guy, and I was jumping on top of him. And I remember hitting him, but I don't remember everything that transpired during that time. I can tell you everything clear as a bell, what happened prior and what happened after.
Right. But there's that's that flip switching thing that you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Exactly.
And this is one of the things when I first started, before Hero Harbor actually came about, when I was still when I was marketing Verimour, this is one thing I used to say is that okay, I completely just right out of my head, whatever. Okay, so we're talking about flipping the switch. What? Oh my God, what were
no emotions.
I'm just not sure. Oh, well, who knows? It'll pop back in there eventually. But so keep going.
So
tell me about. Well, I guess that was part of it. Yeah. So I guess that's what's. Oh, I know what it was. So I told you. I knew. I used to say that the military is really good at creating soldiers, creating warriors, but they're lousy at turning them back into civilians. They don't prepare them. They don't. And there is so much we have planned. I mean, the app isn't even a fraction of what amazing things we have planned for it. But that's the thing. It's like we were already different kind of person when we went in, and then those experiences and everything else. Just like I said, finding your way, and that's where we lose so many. And it's a lot of things. Being the nonviolent person that I am, I have an amazing ability to flip that switch. It's like there are lots of things in this world that I don't want to do, but I can do anything if necessary. And exactly. You were talking about so part of it is the challenge we face with the transition, finding our way, not being able to see the future. We're dealing with all of those things, but then as I've talked about with a number of these interviews, then we get the VA or whoever gets involved, and then we get labels and medications and stuff like that. And in my case, they had, inappropriately labeled me as bipolar. And for 16 years, I took all these crazy meds, and I finally quit taking them. But the last time that I agreed to take them, it ended with me, and this is how finally I was like, no, I don't care what you call me, but I am not taking your meds. But it was because I took the last $400 I had, went out and bought the prettiest little Beretta or something. I don't know. It was nice, but loaded it with guns. I was sitting at my desk, similar to this. I was in Austin, but pointed at my head. And luckily, I was able to dig down and say, "Oh no, you've got something to offer this world." But too many of the people do pull that trigger, and so I get it. It's yes.
So obviously there was an incident review board, and they talked to the cops that were involved and everything else, and then of course they said, well, this is unacceptable, we're going to let you go. And then I had to go to a review board at the health district, who are the people that regulated and issued my license.
Right.
And I remember sitting down with the medical director and his two assistants, and he's like, so tell me, what ran through your mind? What made you?
How do you get to that? This? Right.
Yeah, and so I explained everything that led up to that point, and I'm like, I wanted to give him.
Right.
I wanted to use chemical restraints, but it came to this beforehand. I said, he was a threat. He was literally, even though he was handcuffed, still getting his way out of the belts. Right. On the gurney, and able to kick his legs and everything else. And I'm like,
to himself and to everyone else.
Yeah, and I'm like he was a threat. I said my whole objective was to neutralize the threat. And they're like, he was a patient. You can't neutralize a patient. I said, but he was a threat.
Right.
And he was like, well, he had his hands were restrained. I said, you weren't there. You didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, were the police there? And I'm like, yes. Well, did you ask them for help? I said, you want to know what they did? When they saw what was transpiring, they closed the doors to the ambulance and said, we didn't see nothing. I said, that's the help that I got.
Right.
I
See,
said,
this is why we do the podcast too. That the hero segment of the podcast is because we need other heroes to hear that they're not, you know, they're not alone in their stories. All of our stories are a little bit different, but there's several common threads that go throughout them. And I need civilians to hear what kind, you know, that look, these. One of my favorite interviews is with a guy, you know, an Army guy. You know, you were talking about. He over the course of 2 days lost 6 friends. He said on you know one day he said, you know, inside parts on the outside. The next day burning bodies. You know, he couldn't say that sort of thing. And you know, so he went down this crazy path of drinking and drugs and everything else. And I needed him to tell that story so that people, because I have had civilians listen to it with me, and they're like, what kind of dog?
it's a Queensland healer.
Oh, very cool. I have an Australian Shepherd.
It's probably my wife coming in from work.
Anyway, so I said I need people, you know, to know that you meet these people, you meet these heroes, these men and women, you know, at times that sometimes is not, you know, as he said, when he was going through all that, you know, he had police telling him, you know, he was, you know, worthless piece of shit and this, that, and he is an amazing person, you know,
Right.
But so I needed people to understand that, you know, just because you don't understand what they've done or what they've been through, that's all the more reason not to judge them, because you don't, on any given day when you meet somebody like that, you don't know.
Right.
And they deserve your help rather than your, you know, anyway, keep going.
Right. And so the thing is that right after they fired me, they sent me to go see a psychiatrist, and he, given the history, he's the one that diagnosed me with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn, she's the president of Vermore.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you
This is my
too.
wife, Kathy.
Thank you very, very much. Sometimes being the spouse is harder than being the hero.
Well, no.
You're being humble, but I can tell you that sometimes it is. You know, I've had one of the Marines that I interviewed. He talked about his wife at one point had to, you know, and he was married to her before he went in and all, but she had to kick down a door to keep him from hanging himself. Now they have an amazing life now, but you know, it's sometimes it's hard because you have to see them suffer sometimes, and we don't, you know, when we don't know what to do, we don't know how to fix it, we don't if we've not been there, especially if we're a non, you know, if we've never gone through that, it's really hard to understand. And so you see somebody you care about in pain, and it's like you don't know what to do, you know.
Right. You're right. You're right.
So thank you. Yes.
Yes, of course. Nice to meet you.
Yes, ma'am. Bye-bye.
So, you know, I give him, you know, everything that I went through in the military, and then we, you know, obviously went over the incident that transpired, you
Right.
know, at that time. And he asked me, he's like, has anyone ever diagnosed you with PTSD?
Mm-hmm.
I said, no. I said, I've seen plenty of doctors. They told me,
Right.
you got an anger problem. We're going to send you to anger management.
Right.
And, you know, take these pills. It'll help keep you calm. And I said, but no. He goes, that's exactly what happened. He goes, have you ever heard the term blind rage? And I said, yes, I have. I just thought it was
Right.
something somebody made up, you know, because you get pissed off to that point. You
Right.
just said, I'm in a blind rage.
Mm-hmm.
And when I explained to him that I remembered everything prior and everything after, and he told me, he goes, what you experienced was a blind rage.
Right.
He goes, you went he went you went into a survival mode. He goes, and at that point, everything becomes autonomous. You're functioning on instinct. He goes, your mind isn't even processing what it is that you're doing. And I was like, oh, I'm like,
All the lights.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, the lights
I'm
go
like,
on.
well, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, it was a detriment, you know. And
Because you can't know when it's going to happen. You don't know what's going to trigger it.
exactly, you know, there's things that are insignificant to others.
One of my
can set me off in a way that is unexplainable, you know.
So a story told by one of my Marines. He was part of the OIF thing. In fact, he joined like 2 years after 9/11. But anyway, he was talking about he was out fishing by himself, just fishing, relaxed, everything. He said his hook just snagged on something, and he just lost it. He said he pulled his rod out, broke it all up, threw it on the ground. He says he was out in the middle of the woods screaming nonsense at a tree. He was just something is, and I get it. It's like, you don't know. And of course, then he went to the VA, and they're trying to give him all these drugs, and they want to commit him, and stuff. And he says, I'm a single dad. He said, you think there's problems now? Try to commit me, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's like you have something so simple, but it's just that all of that has been building up in you, and a lot of times, and we are so good at masking our pain. We don't ask for help because we're Marines, or we're Rangers, or we're whatever. We don't need help, and we don't. It's this such a crazy irony, and this was said to me once before, and it's so true. It's like we never do anything alone when we're in service. Never. And yet we get out and we think we're supposed to do it alone. We're supposed to be able to handle it. We don't need anyone else, and that's not true. But yeah, all that stuff is building up, and you like you said, you didn't put the pieces together because we don't think about it. What I've found about myself is that I don't label it as a problem or as bad unless it happens to someone else. If it happens to me, I just compartmentalize it and just keep on going. And then all of a sudden, somebody flicks that card in my little house of cards, and it goes askew, and I have a meltdown, And again, when you have people who are so strong and so independent, and when they have a meltdown, I'm an overachiever, so when I melt down, it's a fantastic thing to see. It's just we're extreme in so many fashions, and you're right. Yes.
Anyway. And when I was working as a medic and at the coroner's office, obviously 99% of the time you're dealing with the shit of society. 1% of the time you're actually helping someone who is genuinely sick, or injured, and they need your help or whatever. With that being said, you see 99% of the time you're seeing the dark side of things. And I remember,
and that's a hard reality to, it is. It's a really hard reality because while intellectually we know that stuff is out there, being faced with it and dealing with it day to day is a completely different thing, and it makes it, I can see where it'd be really tough.
And I remember when I first got into the medical field, I was ecstatic because I'm like, you know what, after my time in the Corps, and because I didn't stay in, I think I had found my true calling. I excelled at it. I was one of the best medics in town. And I used to be so excited to come home and share my experiences of the day. But after a while, a majority of those experiences are not pleasant. And when something that is so disturbing to someone, but to you, it was amazing.
Right.
I always used to say, someone's worst day is my best day. And after a while, your family, they don't want to hear it. It's gloom and doom.
Well, and this is one of the things I've said about the VA too, because I've heard people say, well, the VA doesn't care, and I said I don't believe that they don't care, and it's certainly you have a certain amount of that, but you think about if that was your job every single day to hear these stories, you would be forced to put up a bit of a wall, become a bit apathetic, because for the same reason, if you couldn't be you would lose your mind. You couldn't be a happy father or a happy, husband or whatever, because,
right.
So it's self-preservation is what it is. So, my belief is that they need to rotate. It's like, you do happy stuff this month and you take it on the grind again, in another time. But
and so with that, the only people that you could really talk to are your friends, your coworkers,
right.
because they can truly appreciate it. They
right.
understand.
Right.
Aside from that, you keep it inside.
And it's very isolating, very lonely.
You put up a wall and you just deal with it. And I hate the word obsessed, but I love that job so much that even on my days off, we would watch the news. I would watch the news just to see if I was missing out on something.
Right. No, I get it. I do. I get it.
And it's at that point it kind of consumes you, and when I lost my job, when they fired me after that incident, I lost my mind.
Yeah, because you identify so strongly with it. That was the same thing with me. Is that my professional identity is more important to me than anything in this world. And something you made me think of is you're talking about that stepmother and the whole. She had at one point, she says, we never think to ask you how you are because you just always seem so strong. And yes, that's the face that we put forward. But as I said, then we do that, and we're strong, and we lift, and we carry, and we everybody else. And but then when it happens, like I have episode 8 of the podcast is called "When Heroes Experience Pain," and it's me. I'm actually sitting in my closet recording, but I get kind of emotional because I talk about how I had met a veteran at the park, and it was such a good analogy. He says, sometimes we just want to hand off the bucket. We've been carrying the water bucket for so long, for so many, and we just want to hand it off. And you can hear my voice cracks, everything. It was just because it's like we love who we are, we love what we do, but a lot of people don't get us. They don't, and they look at us like there's something wrong with us, and it's not. It's not. We are very different. We are very special. We are, we're not, I don't mean better, but we're different. And that's a big challenge. And again, that's why we do all this, because what you just said that's it. That's why Hero Harbor was created, so, okay, keep going.
I was distraught. I looked at my director and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? This is all I know.
Yeah.
This is all I'm good at, and
and it's in that place where we have to reach these men and women, because, again, where I got past the whole gun pointed at my head kind of thing, too many of them don't. And because the thing is, there is a future, there is a place for you in this world. We just have to get you there. We have to get you past, But yeah, we're so proud, and our identities are so tied up in what we do very often that yes, it's brutal, and we think, and again, and I've said this before, the civilian world makes us think that we don't belong, And that's not true. That's not true at all. And we're not asking for a special place. We're not asking for special privileges because we're veterans. We're saying is we are different. And again, not just heroes, but not just veterans, but the whole hero community. I mean, again, because your biggest challenges came within when you were a civilian, but as you were a hero of a different type. But damn it, I got myself sidetracked there. But yeah, it's we have to get them past that, that place. And yes, so okay, sorry.
I think that was the first time that Kathy and my mother, they saw how hard of a time I was having, and she actually took the guns out of my house and gave them to somebody to hold on to, because she wasn't sure what was going to happen.
Exactly.
I'm grateful that I made it past that point. There have been other times throughout life where you think about it, but then you go,
this whole idea that you should never ever think about it is just stupid, because the fact is, and this is, I was talking about Rick, the one of the things he said is that, and I've heard other guys say this, that it's not that they didn't want to live, they didn't want to live like that. It's like, I love me, and I love, like I said, I've worked very hard to overcome a great number of challenges. However, again, back to the identity and back to that overachieving, all of that stuff, we don't want to live in a world where we aren't using our talents and our gifts and sure, I could survive. I could be an admin clerk, or I could be whatever, but I would rather be dead. So that's not because, again, I am one of the happiest people you'll meet. I'm so intensely passionate. I love what I do, but it's not that we don't like ourselves. We don't want to live in a world where we can't do what we're good at.
Right. And the fact that, you have, unfortunately, memories don't fade away. They may get a little blurred, but they don't go away. So even though you may have removed yourself from the whole environment years ago,
effect, right?
the thing is that a lot of those interactions that you had during that time are burned into your memory.
Yeah.
And they're not going to go away no matter what you do.
They're part of who you are now.
They're not going anywhere. And I did what the doctor said, here, take this pill, it'll help keep you calm, and that was fine and dandy, for a while. But after a while, I'm like, okay, well, I still feel the same.
Right.
I thought this was supposed to
make me solved anything, right?
Right. I thought it was supposed to make me forget about this stuff. I thought it was supposed to make me happy-go-lucky all the time, and that was where I was misinformed. I just kind of I'm like, okay, well, they're the doctors. They got the degrees. They know what they're talking about. They know what's best for me. And
that's the worst mistake ever. It's like, my granddad was a doctor. He was already gone by the time I got out. But I thought, back then I thought all doctors were created equal. And so I listened to him. And again, this is what hurts my heart so desperately, is that, it took years for me to develop the understanding of myself and the strength to say, fuck you, I'm not taking your drugs. And so many people, I mean, again, I keep saying common thread, but there is in these interviews, medicating medications, and then just the VA is this giant pill pushing machine, but doctors in general, I was told you're always going to be on these meds and da 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 da. And it's like, no,
Right.
And that's the thing is we have too many men and women who get into that place and they don't get past it because they listen to the doctors, they listen to the people. I hugged a therapist at the VA recently. I said, in my nearly 30 years of being in the system, I'm not going to say that you made anything better, but you're the first one who didn't make it worse. And that's the terrifying thing, is the only help that they have available to them. And it's not just the VA, it's private doctors too. It is very often makes it worse.
See, and I never utilized the VA up until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I the way I thought about it, or I viewed it, was, you know what? There are guys and there are men and women who need their service more than I do. I was usually fortunate enough to have a job that provided me decent insurance, and so I'm like, they need their services more than I do.
It is so common. It is so common with us.
And I'm like, let somebody else have my spot, and then when was it, 4.5, I guess about 4.5, 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I get a letter from the Marine Corps headquarters saying, our records indicate you were stationed at Camp Lejeune.
I was thinking about that. Yeah, when you told me. Yeah.
During this period.
So I just recently learned about that whole Camp Lejeune thing. Yeah.
And here, if you've been diagnosed with any of these conditions, and they were all
that they reached out to you. Yeah.
And they were like all cancers, like 5 different forms of cancer.
Right.
And
See,
I'm like,
thing too is that because I recently was approached, because everywhere I go I leave a Hero Harbor, I mean I've never shut up about it, and I always leave a Hero Harbor card, whatever, and I'd left one at an acupuncturist. They were trying to help me with my sleep. I don't da 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 da. Anyway, she had passed it on, and so I get an email from this guy, and he's talking about Gulf War syndrome and all this stuff, and it's like everything that he had, I had always, all my not sleeping and all the different things I had, I attributed to, this or that or the other. And when they start listing that stuff, it's like, wow, that could be. At the same time, though, I am afraid to go down that path of, getting labeled and the, all the possibilities that come with that. And we also, for me to accept that is also, it's like saying that I'm broken. And we know what happened with, with Vietnam and the whole Agent Orange and all of that stuff. It's this weird, crazy dynamic. On the one hand, it's like we would like to have answers. On the other hand, it's like I don't want to hear that, that what I did in my voluntary service and all this, led to, these things. And, again, we are so good, just back to what we were saying earlier, we're so good at pushing through. It's like, yeah, I have not slept properly in 20 years. Never more than 5 hours, never solid. The irony being, what do they ask you? The 2 things they ask you when you go to the VA: suicidal ideations and substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
When do I get my 5 hours of sleep? When I've drank myself to pass out. It's like when I've just gotten to, but we are so, I know I've been running on adrenaline for all this time. I get up at 4 a.m. I left here, I live in Orlando right now, and I left here at 3:30 in the afternoon after being awake all day long, drove like 15 hours to Texas without stopping. I took like 45-minute nap, and then I was mostly awake all the rest of the day. We can, and so we do, and so we don't stop and think that, well, the thing is, even if you do, it's like, if you can't do anything about it, then it doesn't matter. It's just, I mean, we that's the kind of people we are. And it's not necessarily that the military taught us that. We were those kind of people. You were an athlete. It's like you just push through. You take the pain, you take whatever, and you just keep on going. And so, yeah, okay, all right. So
I get this letter, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't have any of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Crumple it up, throw it in the
Right.
trash can.
Right.
Now, since 1993, 1994, I have had abnormal liver enzyme levels. And the doctors for all these years have told me, the first thing that they ask is, well, how much do you drink?
Right. Right.
And I'm like, I don't know, not that much. I'm a
Right.
social drinker, you know.
Right.
Well, if you were to have a 6-pack of beer in your refrigerator, how long would it last? And I'm like, I don't know. I said a 12-pack will last me, you know, a week. You know, I have a couple beers after work, or you know, maybe a few on the weekends, but that's it.
Right.
Well, do you take ibuprofen or Tylenol? Well, yeah, for pain. And they're like, okay, well, cut out your drinking, stop taking the ibuprofen, stop taking the Tylenol.
Mm-hmm.
That was their solution to it.
Right.
And then 2 years ago, you know, again, you know, it came this abnormal liver enzyme levels. So I'm like, you know what? It's time I go to the VA. What if all these abnormal tests over the years are a precursor to something that isn't my fault?
Right. Right.
And right now that's the battle I'm fighting right now is, you know, I've put in claims for it.
Yeah.
The VA doctors have done a biopsy and they've said, yeah, you have, you know, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, you know,
Right.
and then I get a letter from the VA saying, okay, well, this is a recognized condition for
Right.
contaminated water exposure. And I'm like, okay, sweet.
Right.
Now my claim should just
Right.
should flow through.
It's shocking how hard we have to fight.
They told me, they sent me an email saying this is an accepted condition.
Right.
Well, no. Now they're like, well, now we need proof of your service there.
Right.
And I'm like, pull my records. You've got access to them just as much as I do.
Yeah.
Look, you know. And so last week I had to write an appeal statement. And in that statement, I put in there, look, you know, I served my country of my own free will,
Right.
proudly and honorably. The issue that they had with the water there, the government knew about it, the Marine Corps knew about it since 1953. I didn't have a job where I worked on helicopters or whatever, and you know, I was just bathed in the water and drank it.
Mm-hmm.
My job entailed I be in the water for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same water that we drank because there was no such thing as
Right.
bottled water back then. The only people that had bottled water was a sparkless bottle and a cooler in the office.
Right.
They cooked with that water. We bathed in that water. And I'm like, everything matches up. Your doctors say that I have this condition. It's an accepted condition by your standards. So what is the problem? Are they waiting till it turns into, you know, and I've had 3 different doctors tell me, 2 from the VA and 1 was an outside doctor. And all 3 of them told me, you do know what this condition is going to lead to.
Mm-hmm.
It's either going to lead to cirrhosis,
Mm-hmm.
because the scar tissue that's in your liver,
Right.
it'll either lead to cirrhosis, it will lead to some form of cancer,
Mm-hmm.
or ultimately just full-blown liver failure.
Right. Right.
I said, I understand that. And, you know, I'm trying to
Well, and that's
rectify
the thing,
this.
right? And that's the thing. We have to fight so hard for this stuff, and that's what happens is, you know, that's additional on top. It's like sometimes you just simply don't have the strength to fight anymore. You know, you are in a position brought about by your willingness to serve, your willingness to go and do whatever you were asked. And then all of a sudden you're having to fight to, I mean, it's the same thing for me. It's like, how can I help, others when I can't even afford to, pay my own bills and stuff like that. It's,
Exactly.
and that's the kind, and, I don't have, in this case, I don't have a family to provide for, but as I said, my ex-husband is my business partner and he is living at home and so I feel the burden of, all of that because he's living at home in order that he can help, to pay my bills and stuff. And so we, but in your case and a lot of these other, it's like they have families to, and so they're feeling like a failure because they can't, whether they can't provide for their families or, and so it's just, it weighs them down. And sometimes they just lose the will to fight, something they shouldn't have to fight in the first place.
And I think the bureaucracy of it all is that there's somebody who is just sitting behind a desk. They're reading a file, and what they're doing is they're doing everything possible to protect the government. They don't want the government to pay anything out.
Right.
I get that, but if it's a duck, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck. I went all these years without utilizing the VA.
Right.
So if this wasn't if this wasn't something that is possibly linked to my service, I wouldn't even be utilizing it. I wouldn't even be pursuing it, But my thing is that I don't want to end up saying, okay, well, you've got this form of cancer, and and then you go, okay, well, how did this happen?
Right. Well, and you don't want to have to explain to your family why, you're on your deathbed and you didn't, or whatever, you're disabled or whatever, and you didn't do everything you could to improve upon the situation.
Right.
You have a wife and you have people to answer to, beyond just your own self. It isn't, and it's the same thing for me. Is like, again, like I said, I can't. We have amazing things planned for HH. I can't make that happen if I can't take care of myself, and physically, mentally, financially, all of those things. And so it's a bigger picture. It's not just you. It's you have other people you're responsible for too. And so.
Well, and then 3 years ago, I was fortunate enough to become involved with at the time I was working in California, and I became involved with an organization called the Weed for Warriors Project. And the more I talked to them and the more I learned, I started to understand. I always thought, maybe they're just using this as
I've gone through those thoughts too. Yeah.
Maybe they're just using this as an excuse.
Right.
And then when I'm talking to, I call them kids that are 23, 24, they're the age of my kids. And they're telling me, I was taking 10 different pills a day and everything else. And, there were times where I just felt like taking a handful and just calling it a day. And they're like, but once I started using, the medical cannabis, it was like the world changed.
Right.
And I'm like, and so I took it upon myself to educate myself more.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to test this theory. Obviously, I smoked when you're high in high school, but I'm like, back then it was strictly for the high. Yeah. And I found myself, I found it that there was truth to it. I have aches and pains every day. I wake up with new ones every day. But if I use a little bit at nighttime, it helps ease that
Right.
pain. And because of the condition of my liver, I don't want to take pills
Right.
because pills metabolize through the liver. So all I'm doing is speeding up the process.
Right.
And, it helps me get to sleep. That's my biggest problem, is falling asleep.
Right.
If I fall asleep, it's great, but it's staying asleep.
I've actually started researching, researching the whole CBD oil and all that kind of stuff recently, for the same reason, because it's like I am tortured. My mind is tortured by the fact that I can't sleep, and again, I cannot. And there are times when I'm just, because now with the whole Gulf War thing, now that I was only at Lejeune for 3 weeks. I did 3 weeks of training there before Desert Storm, but they're talking about while we were in Desert Storm, the things that we were and then so the 3 things right now that they've associated with it is chronic fatigue. It's flipped you off. I'll count the other direction.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you got to do much better than that. It's like, come on, you step up. If you're going to insult me, you got to step up in your game. Yeah. But anyway, chronic fatigue, irritable bowel, and fibromyalgia, and and as I said, as I start thinking back, it's like, well, I'm always tired. I get up and I'm tired, and so for me, falling asleep, staying asleep, all of that stuff. So I've started to research that, because I went through the same thoughts that you did. It's like, I don't like crutches. I don't like, it's like, I do not need this. I'm a Marine. And I eat, I drink nothing but water. Water and vodka. And like I said, the vodka, a lot of times it's just you give up. It's like, I got to, whatever it takes, I've got to sleep. But point is, I went through the same thoughts of, I don't want a crutch. I don't want to lean on something. I don't want this to be an excuse. I don't want anything, but it's like, look, if back to, you can't help others if you don't help yourself. And if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. And so the power to adjust your thinking is really important. But
once I realized that there was more to it than just the recreational aspect.
Right.
I like I said, I started educating myself, and I'm like, well, you know what? How hard is it to cultivate something?
Right.
You know? And then I learned that it's not hard
I
at
saw
all.
on your feed, your IG feed, I didn't see what you'd written, but I saw the pictures of the last couple of posts you made where you would, that was, anyway, so yeah, go ahead and talk about that.
So I'm like, how hard can it be? And so I tried my hand at it for the first time 3 years ago, and it worked out well. And I'm like, this is great, and I became involved with other vets, and we worked together, and, we, worked for a collective that was out there, and, we did all the trimming. We all had medical cards. We handled deliveries to medical patients, verified medical patients. And that was a big thing for me. Was, I know that there are a lot of vets that they're in a situation where, even if they're getting service help from the VA, they may not be able to afford their meds, even though it's only $9 or $10 a month. They may not have the $9 or $10 to pay for their medication. And so it was important to me to be able to help those, that,
well, you've come,
either they sought me out, or I sought them out. One way or the other, we would cross paths. And it was important to me that I made it available to them.
Right. Well, I started to say, you've kind of come full circle again. You're kind of sort of back into a healing, nurturing medical, realm. and you're also giving back to a community that you know and care about so much, and know so well and care about. So, and so it's, yeah, I can see. I mean, that's amazing. That's awesome.
And
the important part is you have found your path, and you went from that dark, awful, this is the worst thing that could happen to me, and you found your place. You found what you were meant to do, and and that again comes back to what we're trying to do here is just to get these men and women through, get them. I want to tell you about as soon as he can make it happen, a new feature that we're going to be putting in that I am so excited, which will really change. Right now, you would go in and you would have to search for people who are like you and What we're going to do is we're going to implement something so that basically, because there's men and women all over the world in every time zone working all kinds of shifts, everything else, and sometimes you're just hanging out with not a whole lot to do, whatever, and they want to help, they would help, they could help, they have the time. And so what we'll do is you can log in, and basically there'll be a toggle or something that says hey, I'm available. And so now someone else, they're in crisis, they can go in and say, hey, I need to talk, and it doesn't mean, I don't mean on the whatever it is. But the point is that they go in, they say, I need somebody. So then my Tony calls it the bat signal. But as soon as they log in and say that happens, then everybody who has and it'll be, we haven't figured out exactly how we'll implement it, but everybody who's in there who says, I'm here and I'm available, they'll get a notification. They'll get some sort of a badge like on your text message or whatever that says, hey, and so my dog, he's dreaming. So it's Sagan, hey babe, he's dreaming. So he's whatever. Anyway, so that, they will come in and say, hey, I'm here, what do you need, that sort of thing. So that way, because a lot of us, we're not going to reach out. First of all, we may not have cultivated a personal support system, or our personal support system it may be the middle of the night and they may be asleep, and so this way you get help immediately from because there's going to be somebody who is awake at that whatever time it is.
Right.
This thing we're very excited about, but it goes back to, I can't make these things happen. I don't program, and I can't make these things happen without the resources. And it's a challenge, and I beat myself up a lot about it, but it's we're going to get there, and it's exciting. But
I've even made I made a friend that I met through the Weed for Warrior project, through Instagram when I was in California, and young kid, we kind of connected because he was in the Army, but he was Cab Scout Recon or whatever, and so we kind of connected, and we would kind of go back and forth, and I told him how the chapter where I was kind of shit. The guy that ran it was pretty much in it for himself, and so he's like, well, you know what, man? He goes, we're having a monthly, get together, and he was in Southern California. He's like, why don't you come down, and come check it out? And I'm like, all right. But in the meantime, he was going through some stuff. I don't know all the details of it, but it got to where we actually became personal friends, and he would text me and he'd be like, hey man, what do you, can you talk right now?
Right.
And he would just say, look, I'm having a really,
one of those days. Yeah.
I'm having a really hard time. Home life is shit. Work is shit. Everything is just shit. And he would kind of fill me in a little bit, and then it was like I was talking to one of my kids. Right. It was like I went into dad mode,
And sometimes it's not. This is something I've said. We don't necessarily have to know all the details. It's just we just get it. I mean, there's just something about because we've been there, and so you don't have to know the details to to be able to help and to understand. It's just that feeling of when somebody says I get it, and it's like, thank God I have connected with someone who understands, and because that's huge. When we feel it's very isolating. It's like you said before, it's very lonely, very isolating. The fact when you can't talk to your family about what you do or what you're going through or whatever, and you feel it's terrible, and that's how we end up with this crazy high suicide rate. So.
Kathy, she doesn't like the smell of it. She doesn't like
Right.
any of it, and so there sometimes, she gives me a hard time about it, but I explained to her, and I'm like, it helps me. It does. I know it's hard to understand sometimes, but it does, And the other night we were watching TV, and she's like, she goes, I don't care for it. I don't care for the smell of it or anything else. She goes, but as long as it's helping you, and you're benefiting from it, she goes, I'm okay with it.
Right.
She said, just, she goes, just remind me at times that, you may not like it, but it's helping me.
Right.
And
after we hang up, I'm going to text you the episodes of. I would love for you to listen to Rick's interview, because you're going to identify with so many things that he talks about, and when conversations with his wife. I mean, one of the other guys, Matt, he was here at my apartment. I interviewed them both. I interviewed Rick the same way I'm doing with you. But Matt was sitting there, and the whole time Rick is talking, Matt's just nodding his head. And I guarantee you're going to do the same thing. It's like, because we identify, it's like, yeah, I get it. Oh, it's an amazing story too. When you go back and talk about the, law enforcement and, feeling like a piece of crap and people telling you're a piece of crap. He had at one point 107 felonies. He was looking at 200 years worth of jail time. I mean, but then he ended up becoming law enforcement. It's an amazing story, but yeah, I'll send those to you, and I think you'll.
After my time being a medic and whatnot, I had a hard time really finding my niche again, professionally.
Right.
And reluctantly, 3 years ago, I took a job with a company named Hogue. They're family-owned, family-run business that started in a garage 50 years ago, primarily specializing in custom grips for guns. Now over the years, they have expanded into, AR accessories and knives. Matter of fact, one of the people that they have collaborated with is a pretty well-known knife maker, and he was in the Marine Corps. He was a recon Marine, Alan Olishewitz. He makes nothing but high-end knives. Well, he collaborated with the people at Hogue, and he designed their blades for them. So I reluctantly took a job with them, went to California. I don't know why I did it, because I hate the state. And it turns out that, they're very vet oriented. One of the owners, the president, he's a Navy vet himself. And so I went in knowing nothing about manufacturing. I had zero manufacturing experience. But I'm like, you show me what you want me to do, I'll do it. And I'll do it the best that I can.
Right.
And that's what I did. And from day one, they were like, well, we're behind on AR butt stocks. In order to get ourselves out of this hole and have inventory, we need to pump out at least 2,000 a week.
Give a Marine a challenge. Give a Marine a
And
challenge. They're
and,
going
and
for it.
many times I went to work at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
and many times I didn't leave till 7:30 p.m. But I mean, I was just a machine. And there was a day where I had to miss because I had to go to traffic court. And my manager said, "Well, don't worry about it. I'll run your machine for you."
Mm-hmm.
And the next day, he's like, "Dude, I got to give you props." He goes, "I've sat here and I have watched you do this for hours on end." He goes, "And you don't miss a beat. You just keep going and going and going." He goes, "It's like you're a machine." He goes, "I did it for 3 hours and I was ready to just like shut the machine off and be done for the day." He goes, "How do you do that?" I go, "I don't know." I said, I guess it's something that was embedded in me a long time ago. I said, when things
You
feel
do
like
get done.
they're insurmountable, like you're never going to see the light at
Flip
the end of
that
the tunnel.
switch and you just do it. Yep. Yeah.
I said, I put my mind somewhere else. I'm not
Yeah.
even thinking about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of what I'm doing, but I don't think about it.
Right. Right. Oh
I
yeah.
said,
Yeah. It's the
and
same when I was right after I bought my truck, I was averaging 3,000 miles a month. And it wasn't because I wanted to, but I was presenting my company all over the place. And it's just, you do what you have to do. You just do it. And like you said, you flip that switch and you just go. And, and but we were those kind of people before we became, before we became heroes. It's just,
so within a 7-month period, I go from being hired in knowing nothing
mm-hmm.
to them going, "Hey, we want you to run the department."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'm kind of winging this, and the one of the owner's sons, he was the master tool maker. I learned a lot from him because he started off with injection molding.
Right.
And then, I actually got sent to school for a week, and but my real passion was machining. And I'm like, at some point in time, I would like to learn how to machine.
Mm-hmm.
And, my mother's health, started to slip. And I'm like, look, I need to go back home. And they happen to have an office out here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, the only thing we've got available out there is, CNC operator.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, done.
Right.
Show me how to run the machine. Teach me how to do it. I will do it. Well, during this period where I was still in California, they were training me. We actually got awarded the contract to make knives that are issued to the troops.
Nice.
So we work closely with DePaul.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, this is awesome. I'm
right.
like, this is where I'm gonna get my foot back somehow. And so now, I'm like, every blade that I cut, every blade that I machined, or a certain knife model frame
Mm-hmm.
that's made out of aluminum or a composite material, it's going to the military. It's going to the troops. Right. So therefore, I mean, we're perfectionists anyway.
Right.
But I'm like, if someone's depending on this thing to work and not fail,
I love that.
I'm going to do everything that I can to
mm-hmm.
make sure it's the best possible. And so I take great pride in it. I mean, it's a job, right? But I take great pride in knowing that there are people out there that are utilizing something that I have made.
You've made might save someone's life.
Exactly.
And no, I get it. And the thing is this, and again, I knew nothing. Sometimes like Rick's story, I knew some about Rick's story before we talked. I knew nothing about yours. And this is what I tell people a lot of times is that we all have a story. We all have one, and it's different. It's like some of us went through combat, some of us didn't. It doesn't matter. We all have a story, and there are certain common threads that run throughout them. But you have just been one giant advertisement for what I'm doing, because you talk about it's all these things that we understand. This is what I need. This is I need the two sides. I need the heroes to hear, look, you're not alone. We are all going through it, and even when we have found our place, we still have dark moments because we're overachievers, we're perfectionists, all of those things. But you're not alone. So, and then I need the civilian side to hear, look, we're different, but if you give us a chance, we will make your organization better. But you can't expect us to be like everyone else. Let us be who we are, and we will make your organization better. Don't we're not the same. Don't treat us the same. And so that's, you have just been this 2 hours is one giant advertisement, and I love you for that. You're just getting this giant virtual hug. So, but I am so happy that you found your place, and that is just amazing. And so you've got those things. Are you still working with the Weed for Warriors thing?
I do. The chapter here in Vegas hasn't been all that active.
Right.
Some of the people that were like the leaders of the organization here have taken a different path, and they've started another organization for vets. Is called Walk and Talk. And every weekend, every Sunday, they meet up either Red Rock Canyon, or they go up to Mount Charleston or whatever, and they meet up and they smoke a little bit, but then they go on hikes.
Right.
And everybody talks about whatever. Life in general, war stories, whatever. It gives them a chance to bond and just escape for a couple hours. But they also do a lot of phenomenal things within the community. Sometimes they'll go into the shittiest parts of town and walk through the tunnels or the storm drains, because a lot of the homeless people, they make that their home because it's out of the elements.
Right.
And they'll get as many cases of water as they can. People, they blankets, jackets, whatever that is, just people are going to donate to Goodwill or whatever anyways. They'll take that and they'll walk through these tunnels, I mean, in the dead of night, and give water and blankets, and so it's their way of giving back to the community.
Right. And that in and of itself, it's a reward in and of itself. It's like we get great pleasure and great joy from that giving back. And that's what the other thing I say about HH is that, whether you're there to offer a shoulder or to find a shoulder, everybody wins. Because you get, and from that service, you get a good feeling from helping others, so it's regardless of what. And the thing is, today you may be offering the shoulder, but tomorrow you might be looking for it, and so there's just no downside to it. I love that. That is so awesome. All right. So we've been at this for 2 hours. This is not uncommon. This is not uncommon at all, especially with my Marines. They go along, and so I always end up splitting them. But if you are interested in following Lorne, he is both in the app and on Instagram. He's Recon Medic, and he, as you can tell, he's awesome. And I'm so thankful for you. And is there anything else that in particular that you wanted to say before we I let you get back to your lovely wife because I'm sure she's over this by now.
I'm grateful that there's people like you that are bringing awareness to vets and their needs. I mean, obviously there's a lot of cracks within the VA system, and a lot of vets fall through those cracks. And because of that, some people never get to hear their story.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that, with what you've done with your organization.
This is the best part of my job. It's the most difficult, but it's also the best. Dragging people out from behind social, the nameless, faceless, and these guys are my friends now, and I love them so much. So thank you for saying that. But yes, this was the highlight of my day, hands down. I spent a lot of time behind this computer, a lot of time isolated, and then I start getting down and feeling like crap, and it's like I'm never going to make this happen. But this is what I live for these connections. I am so thankful for you guys. So Simplify, Devil Dog.
Simplify. Thank you, Dawn.
Yes, go give your wife a hug for me, and again tell her thank you, because I really meant what I said. So
I will.
I know it's not easy living with us, so what I've said.
So I've been told.
Yes, I have. But to my credit, I said if you think it's difficult dealing with me, try being me. It's not a safe place up there. So right. Take care. You have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed the content we shared with you, please subscribe, review, and share this show with your friends. Veramore, the dating app, and Hero Harbor, the social connection tool for heroes, are both in the app stores. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as Veramore, Veramore_app, or Hero Harbor.